Okay. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Today is Saturday, March 30th, 2024. My name is Jane Kane Edward, Associate Professor and Director of African Immigration Research of the Bronx African American History Project at Fordham University in New York City. Today, the South Sudanese Women Intellectual Forum is having a conversation on the December 2024 elections in South Sudan. Challenges and opportunities with our great guest speaker, Dr. Lam Akol Ajawin, who is with us in the studio. And I'll be moderating this conversation. And to our audience who are following on live, you can follow the discussion actually on YouTube and Facebook. I have a set of questions for our guest speaker, which we will dive on into shortly. And those who are following online, you can post your questions. Then we'll share with it with the speaker when we have time for question and answer session. So before we start our conversation, actually, I want to provide context to the topic that we are going to discuss today with our guest speaker because it's a very important topic. And if we look at the history of South Sudan, the revitalized peace agreement actually was signed in 2018 and ended in February 2023 as call for national it calls for national elections before the end of the transitional period. But because many provisions of the agreement were not signed or implemented in August 2022, the revitalized transitional government actually extended itself to 2 more years via the roadmap that promised election to be held in December 2024. And since that time, actually, since the roadmap was signed in 2022, August 2022, many events actually happened. In early November 2023, President Salva Kiir Mayardit reconstituted the National Constitutional Review Commission, National Election Commission, and the Political Party Council. But despite all this preparation, many people are concerned about the likelihood uh, the December 2024 election will proceed as planned due to the fact that many of the prerequisites necessary for the conduct of free, fair, and credible election were not met. And these concerns actually came from different sections, whether from the international community, particularly the United States Department of State, and also other concerned South Sudanese or civil society groups who felt that many of the provisions actually of the agreement that actually provide for the conduct of fair and free election were not fulfilled. So this is just to provide this context, and we're going to discuss the questions that we have here with our guest speaker based on this short context that I provided. But before we dive into the question, I'm going to read a brief bio of our speaker, uh, Dr. Lam Akol Ajawin. Dr. Akol Ajawin is the chair of the National Democratic Movement. He holds a PhD degree in chemical engineering from the University of London. Dr. Ajawin held various academic and professional positions in the period from 1980 to 1986, including a lecturer in the Department of Chemical Engineering, University of Khartoum, a part-time lecturer in the Faculty of Science and Technology, University of Jazeera, a chair, board of directors, Port Sudan Refinery, and a member of the executive committee of Khartoum University Teachers Union. Dr. Ajawin has been politically active since he was a student, through party politics to representation in parliament. He is one of the founding members of the SPLM SPLA since 1983 and was a member of the political military high command, the highest organ of the SPLM movement, among other positions. From 1998 to 2006 and 16, Dr. Ajawin served in several ministerial and state positions, including the Minister of Transportation, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Agriculture and Food Security in the Transitional Government of National Unity, Chair of the Services Sector Council of Ministers, and Administrative Supervisor or Governor of Western Bahr el Ghazal State. Dr. Ajawin published several academic books and papers in reputable academic and professional journals and many pamphlets and newspaper articles on Sudanese and South Sudanese politics. He is fluent in Arabic, English, elementary German, and the South Sudanese languages of Cholo, Nuer, and Denka. He is married and a father of four. And this is just a brief summary of a long list of many achievements that our guest speaker actually accomplished during his life. And he's continuing to do the same as well. So I'm going to dive in now to the questions and welcome Dr. Lam Akol Ajawin for our event here today. And we're happy that you are with us. The first question that I'm going to ask is about the roadmap. On August 2022, the parties to the revitalized peace agreement agreed to extend the transitional period for 24 months by unveiling a roadmap outlining all the provisions of the agreement that were not implemented. So, based on this, could you kindly share with us, with the audience, and in particular our women of Intellectual Forum uh, and the people of South Sudan, the status of the implementation of the roadmap at current situation?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Jane. I think it's my great pleasure to be talking to you this evening from our side here. I used to hear your name. Maybe I've been reading some of your publications, but we never had the opportunity to be together. So it is an honor today to be discussing with you on issues connected with our country.
Thank you.
I first extend to you and the organizers of this discussion the the season's greeting for Easter, which is just a few hours away.
Mhm.
To come to answer your question, I want to say that yes, as you correctly said it, the roadmap, or what is called the roadmap, is actually a transferring some of the activities that have not been implemented within the time period assigned for them. And as you know, the peace agreement, when it was signed in 2018, it is now going almost to 6 years. It had the two phases. The first phase was what they used to call the pre-transitional period. It was supposed to be 8 months, but then got extended twice until it became 17 months and 10 days. Then the transitional period, which was supposed to be 3 years, and now the 3 years was extended in October, in August 2022, and now people are debating whether people extend again or go for elections. Elections is actually one part of the agreement. It's supposed to be the end result of the agreement, It's not something on its own. All the activities that were put in the agreement were designed, to contribute towards creating a conducive atmosphere for a free, fair, credible, and peaceful election at the end or towards the end of the transitional period. In fact, 2 months before the end of the transitional period. Now, the agreement was marred by a lack of will in implementing the provisions, and therefore, when the 3 years were about to come to an end, in 2023, it was supposed to be, the parties sat down and made a roadmap, which you have referred to, extending the activities that were not implemented. A honest evaluation of the roadmap will show that actually not much was done. In fact, the outstanding implementation is the formation of the institutions related to elections, which were done in November last year, which is the National Election Commission, the Political Parties Council, and the National Constitutional Review Commission. They were formed in November. They took oath in January, and up to now they are still struggling to get their budget so that they can start doing the necessary work to prepare for the elections. As you may know, many political parties have not been registered yet, and for registration to take place, it takes not less than 6 months. And a party which is not registered cannot take part in the election. And as we speak, it is only just over 8 months left for the scheduled period of December 2024. So you can see that the time is very, very tight. There are two challenges facing this election. And the first is that being the first of its kind in the Republic of South Sudan, but not the first kind for the South Sudanese, because the South Sudanese have been taking part in elections inside Sudan. But as a country, we never had an election, and we are now almost 14 years into the new state. In other countries like the US, where you are, and we should have had 3 rounds of elections and preparing for the next, if you are talking about the presidential election. In other countries where you have 5 years, also we are almost close to getting to 3 rounds as well. So what I can say about the roadmap is that it has not found good implementation. And that's why people are still discussing whether it will be possible to hold elections or not. Otherwise, if the roadmap has gone according to plan, it would have been automatic that by December 2024, elections were going to be held.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And I think it's clear that on the status of the roadmap, much of the provisions actually are not yet implemented. And if we move forward to our next question, you are the chair of the National Democratic Movement, and your party is one of the parties of the South Sudan Opposition Alliance, is part of that alliance, SOA. And based on the fact that actually the roadmap is not fully implemented, and some people are actually questioning whether the election should go ahead or not. Um, My question is, could you kindly tell us about your political party and the SOA collusion and the stand of your party in the December 2024 election in South Sudan, whether you are for election or against the election?
Okay. Well, the National Democratic Movement was founded in August 2016, following the collapse of the 2015 peace agreement as a result of the fighting that took place in the state house, which is popularly known as J1. And since then, we have been uh, trying to seek solutions within the framework of the high-level revitalized forum that organized for talks in Addis since 2017 and culminated in the 2018 peace agreement, which was signed in September 2018. During the process, we have been trying to build alliances. Is one of the pillars of my party to seek coalitions and alliance, uh, and this is together with other people. This is how we came to form the South Sudan Opposition Alliance, and it is made up of 9 political parties. Regarding our position on the election or no election, actually, we are saying that another extension, another extension of the interim period on the terms of what took place in August 2022 is unacceptable, in the sense that to the same government that has been in power for 3 years, if it could not achieve what was supposed to achieve, and then it got extended 2 more years and it could not achieve the same, what better chance do they have to achieve uh, the conduct of the election if they are given whatever time of extension? So that one, we found it difficult to accept. At the same time, also, we don't want to buy the argument that since people have fixed December 2024 as a date for conducting elections, election must be done at all costs, because that that uh, that decision was conditional on other things that were supposed to be done before that date, and the parties have failed to do those things, and therefore there is they have to answer why they couldn't do it. Now, what the NDM have done, I mean, we as SOA, we have said, okay, let us aim at conducting elections in December 2024 or thereabouts, provided that one, there are certain provisions or activities that must be implemented well before that date, and there are 8 in our calculation. With the 8, and then there are other 2 issues which require discussion between the parties in order to agree upon to be able to hold elections in December. And that is why our main call has always been, let the parties to the peace agreement sit down and dialogue on the way forward to conduct elections. So uh, this has been our position in general. Later, if you want me to give details, I can give that. In other words, we are saying yes, let us have election, provided that certain activities must be done, and because they were not done in the last uh, 4.5 years, they were not done, and they could be done. They let them be done first, and then we dialogue on the remaining two issues. The two issues are the question of the census and the question of constitution making, because each of them requires at least 24 months to complete. And the agreement says it is provided categorically in the agreement that they must be done before the election. But of course, if we see that the elections are an absolute necessity, the agreement can also be amended by the procedures that are provided in that agreement. And this can only be done when the parties sat down and agreed by consensus on what to do in order to facilitate getting to the elections.
Okay. So, getting from your answer, it seems like you agree that if there are some provisions that are implemented, the election will be able to, you will be happy to participate in the election, except for the two provisions, that's the census and the constitutional making process. Did I get you correct?
Well, let me modify what you said. What we are saying is that if those provisions are implemented,
Mm-hmm.
and if the parties sat down to discuss the other two and reach consensus on what to do, then election can be conducted.
Okay, and I just want to
So
push back like,
it's not in the
yeah,
implementation, but the agreement, the consensus that something what is to be done regarding these two items.
okay. And what about can you tell us what are the eight provisions that should be implemented? You mentioned about eight provisions.
Yeah, the eight that should be done are the following: one, the widening of civic and political space, which is an absolute necessity for any election.
Mhm,
Two is a question of having joint delegations going to the states in
mhm,
order to to sensitize the people about election, because you might have heard also that in some states, like in case of Rumbek and Awil, the supporters of IO, SPLM
mhm,
IO, were chased away. They were not allowed to campaign.
mhm,
Also, in Panjak, the IO supporters also did not allow the SPLM IG people to campaign, and so on. So you cannot have enclaves in a country that is planning to have election. The purpose of these joint delegations is to
mhm.
tell the people that the elections are free for all, and nobody should interfere with the political campaign of any other party. So this is number two. Number three, we are talking that we need a code of conduct for the parties to be able to deal with themselves in a manner that facilitates dialogue and reconciliation more than confrontation and polarization.
Mhm.
And the the good news is that with the help of the UNIMIS, we are at the threshold of signing that code of conduct,
Mhm.
and that would have been one thing cleared. The fourth is that we need a judicial reform. The current judiciary leaves a lot to be desired in terms of neutrality and in terms of independence.
Mhm.
The agreement has provided for a judicial reform committee, and that judicial reform committee is about to render its report. That report must go to the Council of Ministers, and then in order to amend the the Judiciary Act 2012 and the
Mhm.
Judicial Service Act 2012 as well.
Mhm.
So this is one of the things. The other is that the peace agreement has also provided for a constitutional court,
Mhm.
and the constitutional court is an independent court with only the responsibility to deal with constitutional matters. And up to now, we have not done it. We need to pass the Judicial Court Act, on the basis of which the Constitutional Court can be formed. Also, the question of the National Security Service bill, which has been before Parliament now for a month, even after the second reading, that thing bill is important to pass it, because it impacts on the election process. We want a security sector that is independent, non-partisan, and deals with the parties on equal footing. The other issue is a question of funding the institutions that have been formed: the National Election Commission, the Political Parties Council, the National Constitutional Review Commission, and the National Bureau of Standards. These institutions, since they were formed, they have not yet received their budget yet. So it is important to fund them so that they can kick off with their technical work in organizing the election. The Political Parties Council is the one responsible for registering political parties, and therefore related to the exercise of of conducting elections. Last but not least is the issue of unified forces. We need to have that in place, because that will be the national force, whether it is the army, police, security, the civil defense, wildlife, and the rest of them. They need to be an independent national force that all of us can trust in. These are the things we think that should be done, and they can be done. Actually, if you give timelines to them, none of them can. The last one is the one that takes a longer time and can take only to a maximum of 3 months. But the rest can be done in days and weeks.
Okay, and based on your last answer, that most of these things can be done in a very short period of time. So, if we move to our third question, do you think that the lack of the implementation of these 8 points that you just outlined can also represent some of the challenges that are facing the conduct of election in 2024?
Of course, they do, because without these things, you can never have a level field in the election process. And the wonder actually is, why were they not done even in
Yeah.
the first few months of the transitional period? So it is a question of the will and the determination. So if people have the will to hold elections and the determination to do so, then this is the minimum they can do for the citizens to believe that really the country is ready for election. I think that is, if they fail to do that, it means that there is no will to have election, because there wouldn't be a level field for the parties to compete. I don't see reason why people should not be free to preach their language. People should not be free to move all over the country. This is what election is about. You have to be having the freedom to propagate your point of view, and also to have the freedom to be able to move all over the country. These are
Yes.
absolute essential requirements for an election to be possible,
Yes.
even before we discuss the other two.
And I think these are some of the concerns that many people actually raise. The political space for people to
Hmm.
campaign freely within the country, to organize events related to election. And I think that's one of the major concerns that many people actually are raising in relation to this
Yeah.
conduct of
Hmm.
election. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to dwell on question 3 because your answer to question two actually covered some of the points that I want to. Uh, so let us move to our fourth question, which is uh, other political parties are supporting the stand of the SPLM in government of having an election in December 2024. But the main political party, the SPLM-IO, in a statement, in a 10-page statement published on February the 13th, is not in support of the planned elections, arguing that certain preconditions must be met, while also suggesting possible extension of the current peace agreement. What is your take on this, based on the answers that you provided in the previous question?
Well, I think the SPLM-IO have agreed to have dialogue. Yes, this
Oh.
is his position that
Mhm,
it is not possible to hold election because all these things have not been done.
mhm,
But we believe that they should raise them when people are sitting down and discussing issues. You see, the problem with extension is that,
mhm,
first of all, it doesn't guarantee the implementation of those items for which the extension has been made. And we have
mhm.
seen in the roadmap,
Yes.
the roadmap was an extension, and up to now, what we have seen is only the formation of these institutions. You know, so what is the guarantee that if you make an extension, these provisions will be implemented? That is a question people are asking.
Mhm,
The second question is that if if the government with its current composition has failed to implement the peace agreement twice, because this is what the extension means. The 3 years it has failed to do so, the 2 years it has failed to do so, and then now the extension to whatever, whether it is 2 years or more. Why would somebody, you know, who has failed to do something and he kept repeat failing in doing so, why would we believe that he can do so in the third time? So it means that actually, if we fail to hold elections, then the alternative should not be extension.
mhm,
The alternative would be that we should admit that we have failed to
mhm,
implement the peace agreement, and therefore we need a new beginning. We need a bigger now dialogue among all the political stakeholders in the country. Something like the the high level revitalized forum that was done in 2017.
mhm,
So extension is not the alternative. Uh, where that you have 2 more years and it is the same government structure, it wouldn't
mhm,
change anything as far as we are concerned. Even the IO itself is one of the partners in the peace agreement,
mhm,
and many people are blaming them also for having kept quiet during the period of the roadmap,
mhm,
not pointing out that certain items are not done on time because there were timelines for implementing things over the 2 years that they kept quiet. They did not speak until the time was over. So
mhm,
some people accuse them that maybe they have an interest in seeing that extension goes on.
mhm.
I'm not saying that this is their this is their declared objective, but I'm saying this is what the people are saying.
Okay.
Other people are saying that, why the government want to insist on holding elections without conducting the required, we mean without implementing the required provisions that will create a conducive atmosphere for election, is to keep itself in power, because the status quo will favor it, and it will keep itself in power. So both sides are accused of having prioritized, being in power to the cries of the South Sudanese people.
Yeah, and I just want to go to the point, on the same point that you said, if people fail to conduct the election in 2024, there should not be an extension of the same government that failed to implement the provision of the agreement, and also the one that are outlined in the roadmap. And you suggested that we need a new beginning. So could you elaborate more on that, a new beginning? Like, if that new beginning is about dialogue between all the different political parties in South Sudan, does that include also the people who are outside South Sudan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why we're talking about a roundtable conference. A roundtable conference means all the sectors of the community, in government, in opposition, in diaspora, and anywhere. That, you see, the problem of the non signatories was that they said the agreement was not satisfactory to them because they said it did not address the root causes.
Mhm.
Okay, we differ with that analysis, but let us assume that they were right. Then that agreement has gone. The period for that agreement is over. And therefore, there is nothing that can prevent them to discuss a new dispensation. At the same time, also, they are now talking to the government, or they are supposed to be talking to the government in Kenya. While we are here talking about election, the government has scheduled another forum for dialogue with the non-signatories in Kenya. All these mean that all of us are ready to speak. So why don't we create, if we fail to conduct election, then we should call ourselves, we sit down and discuss how do we go forward, with the country. Then you will have a new blood, you will have a new beginning, you will have a new set of provisions for the country. On that basis, now the extension will be only to prepare the ground for election, but under new dispensation.
And that extension, is it going to be the same people who have been running South Sudan for the last
No,
several
it
years, or
cannot be.
a new
Eh?
extension with
This
different people motives?
I already rule out extension under the same people because it's
Okay.
not going to change anything. They had they were supposed to do things in 8 months. It took them 17 months and 10 days. They were supposed to do things in 3 years. It took the 5 years elapsed without doing anything. So what on earth will make anybody believe that they are able to do things in the extended period?
Okay.
And this is why it becomes necessary to have new people involved in the discussion and come out with new solutions that uh, are different from what we have in the
Mm.
revitalized peace agreement.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Um, our next question actually has to do with the fees for political parties to register. Recently, that's question number 5. Recently, the political party council proposed the fee of $50,000 that is required for any political party to be registered officially in South Sudan. And many people actually were unhappy with what happened with this. And I think I was reading the news 2 days ago, where there are about 14 political organizations actually rejected the $50,000. They wrote a petition that that money is too is a lot of money for them actually to pay, and they're unhappy. Those 14 political parties. So, what is your take on this, and what should be done? Because there are some people who think that this $50,000 actually is another way to discourage people to to participate in the political process in South Sudan. So, what is your take on this amount, $50,000, or what should be done, or any recommendation on the way forward on this matter?
Yeah, the parties that made petitions together were 14, but since then, two other parties also
John,
made
okay,
petitions. So there are now 16 parties
okay,
that have a written petition against this unjustified, exorbitant fee for just provisional registration. By the way, is not the final registration, because
mm,
you have to pay again 25,000 in addition to the 50 for you to get registered fully. Of course, the 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 idea itself is crazy for a number of reasons. In the first place, why on earth would a country which has a local currency fix, registration fee in the foreign currency? This is contrary to the rules of the country. This is contrary to the decisions that have been taken by the country to curb, runaway inflation that is taking place in the country. So that is the first point to object to: the use of a foreign currency to fix the the fees for provisional registration. The second thing is there is no basis of that fee, whatever it is. Anything must have a legal basis. So, according to the act says it is the regulations that will fix the amount of fee that will be paid for registration. There's never been regulations issued by the political parties council. So, on what basis was that amount fixed? This is something that uh, parties want to know from the council. Number three, the issue of justice. The parties that registered, and they say now there are 14 parties that registered. Those parties paid 20,000 South Sudanese pounds for them to get registered. Now, is it just to ask the people who are now getting registered to pay more than 1,000 times, actually 2,000 to 500 times of what was paid by those parties? Fourth, it's always good to have a comparison with similar situations. In the region and in Africa generally, parties get registered. All right. In Kenya, which is the next, the most immediate neighbor to us, the provisional registration, you pay 100,000 Kenya shillings, which is about $700. In South Africa, you pay 5,000 rands, which is about $270. In Namibia, you pay 25,000 Namibia dollar, which is about 1,325 US dollars. And in South Sudan itself, I have already mentioned that people were paying 20,000 South Sudanese pound. So if you carry out comparison with other countries that are doing the same, why would one on earth, think of having 50,000 US dollars? You can see now the highest country that charges for registration fee is in Namibia with 1,325, followed by Kenya with $700, and then by South Africa with $270. And now in our case, the $20,000 If you do it by 20,000 South Sudanese pounds, by today's rate is only about $20.
Yeah.
I mean $10 actually, not 20. It is 10.
Oh,
Yeah. So there is no justification whatsoever for imposition of an exorbitant fee, and therefore those who believe that this thing is meant to curb the registration of political parties are right, because in this situation of South Sudan where people are not getting salaries for 6 to 8 months now, okay, will one be paying money to register a party or to find something to eat? You know,
exactly.
and if you take the level of income, we talk the gross domestic income of the South Sudanese. How much is it? And is the money and political parties members, if they collect money, is it only to register or to conduct their political activities? So on these grounds, the parties have rejected this. They have written to the political parties council. They are awaiting what they will say. And of course, if they don't, people have other options to pursue.
Yeah, and actually, this is a good question. And I was reading the news actually like 2 days ago on Sudan Post, and some of the points that you just shared with us, actually, you shared with the Sudan Post about the basis for that amount, and also some of the like issues related to justice and also comparative analysis between South Sudan and getting examples from other neighboring countries of South Sudan. And there was an interview actually done by Radio Tamazuch with the the person in charge of the political parties council. And at the last question that was asked, it's like a Q&A event. The last question actually said, what consequences would a political party face for failing to comply with the council's regulations, less the payment of $50,000? And he said that non-compliance with regulations doesn't signify the end of the election process in South Sudan. This is just the beginning, and there will be future elections. So if a party isn't prepared for the current election, it should focus on readiness for the next one. So how do you say to that response?
Well, that question, of course, is irresponsible, because it's basically saying either you pay the $50,000 or you are not registered.
Mhm,
Because if you are not the registered party, you cannot go for election.
mhm,
So that is irresponsible. Why? Because the council is supposed to facilitate registration. It's supposed to uh, create conditions for legalization of parties. It's not supposed to create obstacles for political parties to register. In fact, as a matter of fact, they should have been the ones to plead with the authorities that they need to have as many political parties in the scene as possible. This is how you create a good competitive multi-democracy system. But it seems that he's bent on keeping out and political parties that they don't like. But of course, those parties will not be sleeping. They will not definitely allow such a thing to go and challenge. Uh, the last laugh will not be his.
mhm. Okay. So I think we you touched briefly on the political and civic space in South Sudan, and I think that's the concern that many international community actually institutions and personnel actually are concerned about. So I think we can pass that question unless you want to add something on that question, question number 6 on political and civic space in South Sudan. uh, in regards to freedom to campaign and freedom to move freely within the country.
Yeah, yeah, I touched it before that
Yeah, you touch on that.
people are not yet free. We need to create that space to
Mhm.
create a level ground for the political parties to be able to participate in an election. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to move to the next question. Our next question actually is related to our neighbor in the in the north, South Sudan. Sudan. And I think you know that there's war going on in Sudan, which started in April 2023, and it might actually enter its second year. It's almost 1 year now, and it's going to another year in April this year. And also, recently, reports say that South Sudan key oil pipelines to the international market, which passes through Sudan to Port Sudan, was damaged in early February 2024. And given the fact that South Sudan actually is heavily dependent on the oil revenue, about 90% of South Sudan revenue actually or economy depend on the oil. So based on these circumstances, particularly the war in uh, in Sudan and the damage in the oil pipelines, what do you think are the implications of all this on South Sudan, particularly on the upcoming election and political stability in Sudan? In South Sudan, I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually very unfortunate because the war in Sudan, even before it affected the oil flow, it's already affected the economy in the sense that there were many commodities that used to come from Sudan to
Mhm,
South Sudan. All this is stopped. Also, the influx of refugees
mhm,
from Sudan uh, have exerted pressure on the resources, the little resources South Sudan have. Now coming to the oil, which is the lifeline of all government institutions, the situation becomes more serious,
mhm,
especially that as we speak, many civil servants have not received their salaries for more than 6 months. And if such an important element of the economy is interrupted, then we are in difficulty. Of course, we kept talking over the years about the diversification of the economy. You know, it is not good politics to have
mhm,
one commodity to be relied upon,
mhm,
and especially when it is a commodity like oil, which is volatile in the sense that the price continues fluctuating and
mhm,
so on. And our situation even made worse by the fact that all what we produce is exported underground through one channel, which is through the Sudan to the international markets. We don't even have we don't even a mini refinery to have some of our demands of petroleum products. We now export the 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 petrol, the diesel, all these products which are extracted from the oil from abroad.
mhm,
All these things now are getting us unprepared, and you find now that this portion of the pipeline that got interrupted is actually more 60% of what we used to export.
mhm,
The other line, which is now is about 50,000 barrels a day, is the one that goes through Hegelich. Is the only one that is not affected. But the one that takes most of the oil is now shut down.
mhm,
For sure, the, 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 the income that could have accrued from the sale of that crude will not uh, will not be available in our economy, which is already struggling to try to adjust itself to the difficult situation. So definitely, the war has affected us very greatly. And you remember during the 2012 in January, when the
Mhm.
government decided to
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 shut down
block,
the oil.
to shut down the oil. You heard them talking about, oh no, now from on we are going to have alternative pipelines. We are going to have this and that. And now it is 12 years since then. If people had explored, or people have started working on those things, they would have finished some years back. Now that we are faced with this situation, then people begin again to repeat the same thing. I heard some of these ministers talking about, oh, we need to diversify our economy, we need to bring in investors, and all this take time. When if you bring an investor, how many years does he need for the investment to produce results? So it seems that whenever a crisis happens, then we begin to put forward what we think are the solutions. And as soon as that thing is over, we shelve everything and it
Mhm.
becomes life as usual.
Mhm.
So we are really in difficulty.
Mhm.
First, the economy is struggling in the sense that you cannot even pay the salaries of your employees. And this is a contract. You had a contract with your employees that they give you service and you pay them money. This thing is not happening.
Mhm.
You are also talking about elections, and elections really take a lot of money. So how do square the circle, in order to meet all these things, these ambitious projects that we want to get into? So it is a real problem, and it will be with us for a while.
Yeah, and I also
We
want to.
hope that we hope that the war in Sudan stops, but we don't see any signs of it stopping soon.
Yeah, and just on this point, yes, the war actually seems like it's not going to end soon in Sudan. So, do you think because there's some actually people or other institutions who are thinking that maybe there's going to be a spillover, the war in Sudan actually can spill over to South Sudan. Do you think that's going to happen, or maybe this is just uh, speculations of some people, given
Well,
the.
this is a this
Mhm,
this is a security aspect.
mhm,
Uh, you know that already there are accusations between the two warring parties that they have been joined by Southerners, whether it is the army or whether it is the rapid support forces. Each of them accused the other that they have recruited South Sudanese. And of course, the term they use is that they are mercenaries. Since they are not members of that country, if they join their war, that is the definition of a mercenary. You see, uh, this development is very dangerous in the sense that if one of the parties gets defeated or retreats, they may find it easier to fall back on South Sudan. And therefore, they will bring in the insecurity because those people who have joined them are people who ran away from the current government. So you don't expect them to be friendly
mhm,
uh, to the government. We hope this does not happen, but it is a possibility.
mhm. Yeah, that's a major possibility, and we hope for the best actually. And on our next question, it has to do with the you mentioned earlier that where the country actually or South Sudan is left with only 8 months for the election, and uh, and to take place, but no one is seeing any preparation going on by political parties, and particularly because of the restriction of the civic space. There's no voter registration infrastructure. So I just want to ask you, given these challenges, not only the civic space, but even the infrastructure, like uh, and I mean physical infrastructure that connects different states in South Sudan. You can move from Juba to Bor, to Malakal, to Wau, to other parts of South Sudan. The infrastructure is poor. So, should the citizens of South Sudan be worried that the election might not be free and fair, and based on the challenges that are facing the election process itself? Uh, should they be worried, or they should just sit back and wait until what happens?
Well, I've already outlined the
Mhm,
kind of measures that should be
mhm,
taken for 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 the government to create a conducive atmosphere for the elections,
mhm,
to create a level ground in which the election will be considered to be free, fair, and credible.
mhm,
But as you said, yes, there are other factors which are technical in my view,
mhm,
uh, especially regarding the the the, the National Elections Commission. The National Election Commission is not only about the commission that is here in Juba that were formed and took oath in January, but they must have committees in each state and also subcommittees in the counties
mhm,
and a big number of election officers that will be involved in running the election, the registration of the voters, the question of conducting voting later on. And all these people need to be appointed, trained, so that they are ready to do their jobs. All these committees need to have premises in the states, in counties, and all these. And all these things need money. And this is why I said before that it is important to uh, avail adequate funds for the election related institutions to be able to carry out the task that has been given them. Uh, yes, infrastructure has been a challenge, but it's not the first time that as I told you before, the South Sudanese have been taking part in elections before. It is only the country that has not conducted an election.
mhm,
We have had the similar difficulty in infrastructure, and that's why elections in Sudan as a whole, and South Sudan was part of it, were conducted during the dry season, because during the dry season, cars can drive even with in places that have no roads.
mhm,
They say in Sudan that roads are made by cars; they are not made for cars. You see, so we can deal with the question of infrastructure. If that is the only problem, it will not be something that can prevent election. Of course, it is good to improve, to aim at a better infrastructure. But if we don't have the roads asphalted, if we don't have the road tarmac, if we don't have the road maram, it will not prevent the election taking place, because this is why we always say we have to do them in the dry season. But the real challenge is how do we uh, enable the National Election Commission to be able to do its job. This is the technical part. The political part that must be done first are the 8 points that I have mentioned
mhm,
before. This is what will make the people believe that the political structure is ready to have elections.
mhm. Yeah, so I'm still thinking about this election because there are so many publications out there, and I read one press statement actually published by the SPLM National Secretariat of the Secretary General. And my point is fair, free, and credible election. Yes, people can conduct election, but are they going to be fair or free and credible? Because in that statement that was published March 20th, it says, and I'm quoting here, we propose that we conduct presidential and gubernatorial elections in December 2024 and the parliamentary elections for to follow after 1 year of the elected government. Is that something that is going to happen given the challenges that uh, the, the, the government is facing today in relation to the election? And is the government going to actually conduct, if the election happen, are they going to be fair, free, and credible elections where everybody will accept the outcome?
Well, actually, that press statement was very unfortunate, but it was not surprising because this is what they have been saying all along, that they want election to be done at all costs. In fact, it is the first time now for them to say they cannot be done, eh, and they are selective of what they want to be done. They want the presidency and they want the gubernatorial election to be done. But on what basis? Because if you want to have, these are executive positions. If you elect a president, who will he govern with? Who will oversee the work of the executive? The same thing, if you elect a governor in the state, who will be the one to oversee the work of the executive in the state? So these are, you know, like, being picky
Mhm.
in what needs to be done. It is not practical. It is either there's election or no election. You
Mhm.
cannot have, election that is, uh, uh, what do you say? I will not call it partial because partial will also mean that it is done in parts of the country in exclusion of others. But I will say it is selective elections.
Conducted. Mhm.
Yeah, you choose what you think will be advantageous for you and leave out the rest. The agreement is a complete whole.
Mhm.
The agreement says election is the end of the transitional period.
Mhm.
Period. So if that is the end of the transitional period, it means you have to elect all the offices. All
Mhm.
the elective offices must be open for election.
Mhm.
You are either able to do that, or if you are not able to do it, then you think of other alternatives, what to be done.
Mhm.
So that kind of thing is always, a way of trying to be, taking advantage of certain situation, and then not caring about how does the power game play.
Mhm.
The government has three arms.
Mhm.
Any government has three arms. Of course, you cannot elect the judiciary. This is why we have been talking about reforming the judiciary.
Judiciary, yeah.
But you cannot have an executive without a legislature. You know, and then when you go for election, that is the end of any appointments. You cannot appoint people anymore because this is a democratic system. So
Mhm.
there is a muddled, approach to things in such situation. And this is, of course, a point of view which, like the one I said about the IO, they
Mhm.
should bring it to the table when
Mhm.
parties are dialoguing on what to do regarding the way forward for the elections.
Mhm. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And I think question number 9, you already covered that when you talked about the two provisions that need to be dialogued on or negotiated between the different parties and agreed on, and that was the census and the permanent constitution making. But this question actually is focusing on whether election can be held without a permanent constitution or a census.
Yeah,
Is
as
that
I
possible?
said, these things should be subject to discussions
Mm-hmm.
by the parties. But my personal view is that it is possible to hold election without a census, because the census, in as far as the peace agreement is concerned, it is only related to the demarcation of the geographical constituencies. And if that is the premise, which I assume is true, then one way of doing it, because there are also many ways, I don't think that is the only way, but the one way of doing it is to take the constituencies in 2010 election
Mm-hmm.
in South Sudan. There were 102 geographical constituencies, and since the geographical constituencies in the present dispensation of the law is supposed to be 50%
Mm-hmm.
of the seats, it means that you will have a parliament of 204, and those the women seat and the party list seats are calculated accordingly, out of 35% for the women and 15% for the party list. This is one way
Mm-hmm.
of trying to have election without a
Sense.
census. There
What
could
about
be
permanent
other ways, but this is, yeah.
What
Let me
about
come to the
permanent?
permanent constitution.
Okay.
Pardon?
Yes, permanent
Yes,
constitution. Is
to
it
the
possible to
to the
conduct?
permanent the permanent constitution actually uh, is very important in the sense that it will be the first time for the South Sudanese, in fact, to debate what kind of constitution they have. The one we have now was a transitional. First of all, it was an interim constitution for
Mm-hmm.
South Sudan in 2005. So when the country became independent, it was supposed to be amended to care to take us to the next election that was supposed to be in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a constitution written for only 4 years, and therefore it is a transitional constitution. Unfortunately, because the war took place in 2013,
Mm-hmm.
they could not hold election in 2015, and
Mm-hmm.
then again another war took place 2016, and so on. So the transition constitution became more transitional than it was meant to be at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we have not discussed very important issues regarding the basic law of our country, which is the constitution.
Mm-hmm.
We have not discussed the system of rule. Are we better off with a presidential system or a parliamentary system or a mixture? This has not been settled. We went for the presidential system in Naivasha because that was a system that was in Khartoum. It
Mm-hmm.
was not discussed, so we just adopted it. But the South Sudanese need to decide. Our experience in South Sudan and in the Sudan as a whole has always been with a democratic, system. The prime minister and the rest of it. That has been our system all along. So we need to discuss this and resolve it as South Sudanese. What system of rule will suit us better? Secondly, we have decided in the peace agreement that the country must go federal.
Mm-hmm.
We must adopt federalism as the system of governance in South Sudan. What was left is to discuss what kind of federalism that we want, the details of the federal system that suits our conditions, because there is no blueprint for all federal systems all over the world. You know, the federal system in America is not the same as the federal system in India or
Mm-hmm.
in Germany, eh, or in Brazil and the rest of it. So we need to debate that because the federal system must be suited to the peculiar condition of that particular country.
Mm-hmm.
We have not discussed the type of economy that we should have. And all these and a number of things have not been discussed. And this is why a permanent constitution is so important. so that these issues are settled and put into the constitution. Even if you adopt a presidential system, there's no term limits there. It was not necessary to put term limits at that time because it was only meant for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
The term limit would have been put into
Mm-hmm.
the permanent constitution that would have come after.
Mm-hmm.
So all these issues need time to discuss. And this is why I say that this thing cannot be done in less than 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
The parties may decide that, yes, as important as it is, the election can wait until we have a permanent constitution. But they can
And
also
that,
say,
mhm.
eh?
Go ahead, go ahead. Mm.
Yeah, but they can also say what we need is to have agreements on these important points that we have gained in the peace agreement. The peace agreement has made us to choose the federal system. The peace agreement has made us to open the discussion on the system of rule. The peace agreement has discussed economic reform and the economic way forward. That you can also say, okay, let us have those things in the constitutional text that is agreed upon by all of us so that it becomes binding on whatever government is elected after the elections. These are possibilities that
Mm-hmm.
could be discussed. And
Okay.
as I said before,
Mm-hmm.
it is not the only possibility. Other people can come up with their own possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And we're almost going to we have two questions left actually. And I know you touch on this some of these points, but still I'm going to ask, and you can add whatever you missed in your answer earlier. So many people are anticipating that there is a possibility of South Sudan going through another extension of the current peace agreement and revitalize transitional government. It seems many South Sudanese are not happy about this possibility. Some of them also think that any possible extension is an extension of the suffering of the people of South Sudan. So, do you think that any extension of the current government is an extension of the suffering of the people of South Sudan? Or what do you think?
Absolutely. It's not only an extension of the suffering of the people of South Sudan, but it's also an extension of failure. You know, we must be honest to
Mm,
ourselves before we become honest to the South Sudanese people and international community that if we can't do things right this time, then we must say we have failed. Because even in our own traditions, they say you have only three possibilities. I mean, three chances, to do anything. Now we have exhausted the three chances.
mm,
What is it that will make us succeed this time around when we have failed in the pre-transitional period? We have failed. We have failed in the 3 years. We have failed in the 2 years extension. Okay. What will the new extension bring? That will be different. So
exactly.
any extension, to me, is not only an extension of the suffering of the South Sudanese people and actually is standing against their aspiration of choosing their leaders, but it is also an extension of failure of a political dispensation that has relied very much on power sharing.
Mm. Yeah, and that has been the case actually since the CPA. The CPA was a power sharing agreement. The the transitional the second agreement that was signed in 2015 actually also a transition a power sharing, and the 2018 is a power sharing. So I think people need to move away from power sharing agreement to something that actually address the needs and aspiration of all South Sudanese people.
Actually, the CPA, many people don't see this angle. The CPA has failed to achieve its two objectives. The two objectives of the CPA were
Mm,
one, to bring about peace in Sudan, whether it continues to be one country or the referendum in the south results in a separate country. Two is to usher in the Sudan or two Sudans into democratic practice. None of the two was achieved. First of all, there was no peace in South Sudan and in Sudan. As we see now, South Sudan went into war just 2 years after independence. Sudan now is in war with itself. Before this, there was war in Darfur. So the peace was not realized. There's no democracy. There's no democracy here. There's no democracy there. So the CPA has failed to achieve its objective. The two, which is the two aspects. The
Yeah.
only thing the CPA has done, for us, the South Sudanese, is that we were able now to gain our country through the referendum. The referendum resulted in having a separate South Sudan. That's our consolation of the CPA. So
Yeah.
that is a very important point to consider. So the
Yeah.
power sharing of the CPA has also failed. They has also failed. Yeah. Now, what needs also to be mentioned is that even this referendum could not have happened if it were not that the Americans, who were the guarantee, they were unwritten guarantor of the CPA, were not pressuring the parties all the time, which is not the case now with the IGAD, which were the guarantors. They did not feature at all in pressuring the parties to respect the peace agreement. They washed their hands at a very early stage.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you that the CPA actually failed in its two objectives, as you mentioned, bringing peace to Sudan and also ushering in democratic process in either Sudan or in the two Sudans, Sudan and South Sudan. So we're now going to our last question. What are your recommendations on the way forward? What message can you give to the women, and I mean here women because this the organizers of this event are South Sudanese women intellectuals. So what message can you give to the women and the South Sudanese people watching this program today? And you can also add some of your concluding remarks in this question.
Yeah, what I would want to stress is that the need for dialogue. The peace agreement would not have been possible if the parties did not sit down to discuss the problem facing the country and to evaluate all the possible solution until at the end of the day they reach a peace agreement. Also, the roadmap would have not been possible without the parties sitting down and agreeing on the roadmap, which is actually, in essence, the extension of the transitional period for 2 more years. And therefore, I am saying that this dialogue must continue this time because the issues that are being discussed are so vital for the future of our country. And so, whatever point of view each party has, they must bring it to the table and then try to persuade others into agreeing with them or making compromises in the middle. So, that is my first message to all the South Sudanese. They must pressure their leaders to take the dialogue seriously because there are some people also who want to hijack this dialogue for their political ends, trying to polarize. And polarization is the very opposite of dialogue because it means you dig your own position and you don't move out of it. So that's the first message. The second message is for the women. As you have said correctly, this is a forum for women. The women are very, very important element in transforming the society. I don't need to dwell on that so much because it is obvious. And that's why the people have been thinking about how to empower women. And we are talking about empowerment because our cultures and our traditions and the way we were brought up have made a stereotype role for women that they cannot go beyond. And this is an archaic idea. Now, with the development of education, the development of societies, you know, introduction of new ideas, we cannot retain all those aspects of our culture and traditions. But many people beat themselves. Oh, we must, uh, we must maintain the culture. We must maintain the tradition. No, we are not talking about maintaining. We are talking about keeping the good aspects of each, the good aspects of culture, the good aspects of tradition, and so on. And there are bad aspects of these, especially in regards to women. And the women of the past are not the women of today. You know, the women leaders, women have become prime ministers in countries, they have become presidents, and so on. Why is it not in South Sudan? You know, so we are saying that let the women play their role, especially when they are more than half the population. Uh, this empowerment is reflected in many ways. The most obvious thing that people talk about is, oh, let the woman percentage. Now they say, let the woman be 35% in the government institutions and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look closely at that, are the women who are effective in choosing those? Or is it men who choose women of their choices and they say women have been represented? When you talk about representation, then it means it must be the constituency being represented that chooses its representatives.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to reform that. We need to be very clear that if a party is to choose 35% of the women, there must be a mechanism within that party where
Mm-hmm.
it is the women themselves who choose those 35%, not the leaders who are men and choose any woman and then say, oh, now we have satisfied the condition of the 35% for representation. The same thing in government also. There must be a mechanism whereby the choice goes to the woman. Otherwise, again, we'll be cheating women in the name of women, you see. The other thing that we need also to caution the society about is that the role of women in the society is not a gift. It's not something that we can all pride ourselves that we have given women this, we have given women that. No, it is their right that we have taken from them centuries ago, decades ago. We are now we are trying to return to them what we have been taking from them. So people should not make women feel grateful that it has been decided that they should be empowered. That is their right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this concluding remarks. And yes, women actually played a great role and continue to play a great role in our society. And on the issue of the women representation, I agree with you that we need a mechanism of how to choose the women who is going to be representing the interests of women, and women should be the ones actually choosing their representative, because if the women actually do that, then they are going to choose women who are actually going to represent the interests of the women and not the interests of the political leaders, most of whom are actually male, who are currently actually deciding who should be in the position of power. And I want to add that also we should not only look at the women representation in politics only. We need also to empower women in different other fields, in economic, social,
Mm-hmm.
and uh,
Yeah.
other aspects, because that's very important. So I want to thank you very much for participating in our discussion today. And I'm sure our audience learned a lot. I just want to ask Aisha if there are some questions that some people posted about the discussion, and if they want to they need more clarification from our guest speaker, please you can share it with me so that I can share with our speaker so that he can answer. Okay, Aisha actually said there are no questions asked.
Okay.
Yeah, so I once again I really am so honored to be the moderator of this discussion, and this is my first time to see you in person virtually. I saw your photos and all that, but this is my first time actually to see you virtually, and I hope that one day we will meet in person so that we can have more discussions on some of these issues that we discuss, and in particular on issues of women or academic issues that we have interest on. So I want to thank you once again for accepting to be part of this discussion.
Oh, it's my pleasure. As I told you before, this is I've heard of you many times. I even read some of your writings, but today is an opportunity to be face to face discussing
Mhm,
these matters. I thank
mhm,
you and Aisha and the rest who thought of this idea of hosting me. I'm
mhm.
grateful and I'm thankful, and I think that anytime that you feel that there is a discussion to be taken, I'm ready to get involved. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We'll have you again actually to come and discuss maybe when we are approaching the end of the year, and if there are any developments that are going on in South Sudan, we'll be able to call you back again also and share with us some of her perspective. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best. And we hope to meet again virtually, and the next time maybe in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you. The pleasure is mine. Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right.
So
Bye
the
bye.
topic